right, we're gonna start. There we go. Thank you. So weird. We're gonna start the regular Community Development Commission for August 24th, 2022 at 3:33. And who's doing roll call?
I am.
Oh, great.
All right, so is Councillor Renee Villarreal here?
Present.
Is Councillor Ken Hughes present?
His excuse.
Is Carlos Lopez here?
I think she might be excused.
Is Councillor Marquez Villegas here?
Commissioner? Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gabby, are you here? Or Commissioner Marcus?
Marquez Villegas?
You're on mute. I don't know if she hears us. I was trying to talk to her earlier, but. Can you hear us, Gabby?
Are you all able to hear us?
Yes,
Okay.
Come back.
Yes, we are.
Is Commissioner John Padilla here?
I'm here.
Is Commissioner Ann Watkins here?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Fine. Is Commissioner Torres?
yes,
Yes.
Okay.
So I just saw the chat. Commissioner Marcus can't hear anything. Maybe write her back and say if she could log in and out again. Well, she's definitely here. We'll mark her as present, and then maybe if you could just let her know if she could try to go back. Does she get the messages too? All right, we'll see how that works out. I'm gonna move on to the approval of the minutes from,
May I just ask, is there a Wi-Fi connection we can? Hook up to?
Yeah.
this? So-
Should be all together Santa Fe,
Okay,
and then there's no password. I think you just have to commit to being COVID safe.
You actually-
okay, thank you.
you actually have to type in your name, you have to sign it, and then you have to press submit, so. the process.
Madam Chair, do we have a quorum?
We do have a quorum.
Thank you.
We're moving on to the approval of the agenda. Were there any changes to the agenda? from
No
staff?
changes from staff.
Okay. Any
Well,
change-
I'm sorry, there is one change. Today I will be playing the role of Daniel Hernandez,
Okay,
the Midtown Development Consultant. That will be me
for today.
for
Great.
today.
Okay, thanks for letting us know. I don't know if that really requires an amended agenda, but can I get a motion? There's no
To
change.
approve, to adopt the agenda as written.
Yes,
So moved.
we got a motion.
Second,
from
Commissioner Padilla.
Watkins. And that was a second from Commissioner Padilla.
Yes,
Okay, great, and. I guess we have to do a roll
Roll
call.
call.
Really wish we could do this. Please vote.
Okay, so
Okay,
that's you.
so Councillor Villarreal,
Yes,
Commissioner Hughes.
He's not here.
Oh, he's not here. Commissioner Marquez Villegas. Commissioner Marquez Villegas. Are you present? I mean, are you voting? What's your vote? Yeah, okay.
okay,
And then Commissioner Padilla
yes,
and Commissioner Watkins.
Yes.
Don't ask, she's not. Commissioner Torres.
yes,
everybody, all right. Agenda's approved. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes from June 15, 2022. Were there any changes from staff?
No changes from staff.
Any changes from commissioners? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the commission?
Move approval of minutes as written.
Thank you, motion. We have a
Okay.
motion by Commissioner Watkins. Can you hear us all okay?
second,
second by Commissioner Torres. Can we get a roll call again, one more time? Well, not one more time. We'll get one more.
Counselor Villarreal.
Yes.
Commissioner Marquez Villegas.
She able to, there you go.
Sorry, I was unable to hear everything. I just got it fixed.
Great. We're just voting for the minutes, approval of the minutes.
I vote for approval.
Commissioner Padilla,
yes,
Commissioner Watkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres.
yes,
Excellent. Minutes are approved. All right, moving on to item 5, which is the approval of the 2021-2022 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, also known as CAPER, for submittal to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is HUD, as a condition of the city's Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. And I'll pass it over to Cody.
I won't go into a really long-winded presentation, but I will just run through some of the balances and the accomplishments, and then give you a rundown of the community participation process. And then as we go on, please feel free to barge in and ask questions as we go, or we can save time for the end as well.
And if you can't hear us, please let us know, because we're assuming you can hear us with the. Oops, sorry.
Madam Chair. Comments from Commissioner Watkins, I mean, are very muted or very muffled. If she could just, if Commissioner, if you could just speak up, it is a little bit hard to hear you.
Okay, thank you, will do.
You betcha, thanks.
All right, so I'm just gonna run you through all these line items. These are what was listed on the memo. There's some things that we actually had to change this morning, but just minor tweaks. The public service activities, that includes the Interfaith Shelter and Women's Summer Safe Haven, and they served a total of 112 women and their children. It also includes the Youth Shelters and Family Services, Transitional Living and Street Outreach Programs. And they provided beds and case management, outreach services, and referrals to 96 homeless youth or at risk of homelessness youth. And then a major chunk of that actual served is the Adelante, which served 855 homeless students and their families. There is a little bit of a remaining balance on that line item, and that is from Adelante. Their contract was amended. There was the Casa Cielo program, the end of life was canceled, so those funds were reallocated. So they got an additional $17,000 at some point, I believe in like February.
Yeah.
maybe. So that's why they had a little bit of change left there at the end of the year. So the proposed serve was 980, but they served about 1,063. They all reach more people than they intended to. I did ask some of our program partners to provide stories, make this a little more interesting, to kind of contextualize the impact. And I reached out to Michelle Vinery at Santa Fe Public Schools, and since she's a development specialist, she had a bunch of packaged great stories for me. So forgive me, but I'm gonna just read this word for word instead of trying to paraphrase. This year, an Adelante team member worked with a teen mother who was an unaccompanied youth. After the baby was born, the student began staying with her teenage boyfriend and his mother. The mother of the boyfriend has 8 children of her own. This meant adding the teen mother and baby into the household made a total of 11 people in a 3-bedroom apartment. The mother of the teen boyfriend works nights and sleeps during the day. This left the teen parents skipping their high school classes to take care of their baby, as well as the boyfriend's mother's 1-year-old and 5-year-old. When Adelante began working with the family, the baby was enrolled in childcare with Presbyterian Medical Services, and the enrollment process for the boyfriend's mother's 1-year-old also took place. Adelante team members also successfully enrolled the boyfriend's mother's 5-year-old in pre-K, which the child should have already started at the beginning of the school year. Within 2 weeks, Adelante provided services to improve outcomes for a baby, a 1-year-old, a 5-year-old, and 2 teen parents. Through the support of the Community Development Block Grant, 5 individuals received the assistance needed for continued well-being and critical learning opportunities. So although they reported 855, and that's what we have to report to HUD, really they, I believe the number, I don't have it here, was they counted 2,614 unduplicated individuals. So this program reaches far beyond the actual scope. That second line item, the rental units rehabilitated, that would be the Casa Cerrillos and Sunrisa floor replacement with St. Elizabeth. They expended their entire balance. The proposed serve was 29 apartment units. We're gonna have their floors replaced. And I had to follow up with Edward because they only reported 25. And that ended up, the breakdown of that was 23 apartments at Casa Cerrillos, 3 at Sunrisa, and then that rounded out number is actually, they replaced the floors in the community room and the common areas at Casa Cerrillos. So the HUD database doesn't have nuanced takes on this, but maybe we'll try to find a way. The homeowner housing rehabilitated, that 100 grand was for the Habitat home repair program. And they do have a chunk of change left over. When I think it was about in April, we reached out to all of our grantees and like showed them whatever balance they had left on their contract and asked if they expected to get it expended by June 30th. And at that point, they had, excuse me, they had about $56,000 left on that contract in April. And at that point, Fritz Denny, the program manager, he asked if he created a bunch of brochures and flyers, and I think they took out an ad in the New Mexican as well. And since then, they've had a really good burn rate. So they do have a lot of money left over, but he was saying that kind of was a word of mouth thing. They didn't have a lot of people knowing about this service. But something I was kind of considering, I talked to him this morning, and we're going to try to find ways where we can maybe distribute flyers through the city's communications team. I brought that up in April when he first brought us the flyers, and they were a little hesitant on advertising for a nonprofit. But maybe since they're carrying out work on behalf of the city, maybe we can work something out. Another thing I was thinking about is since most of the people that they serve are elderly people, according to him, 90% of his clients are elderly widows living alone, that perhaps we could even partner with like the city's senior services division and get this program out that way as well. He has a ton of stories, but he basically really wanted me to relate to you all that 100% of the clients are Santa Fe locals who have lived in these homes for decades, if not their entire lives. And these critical necessary repairs allow these residents to remain in their homes, keep them from being displaced, and keep them safe. And a lot of this stuff is, they're like necessary repairs to the house, but they're also help people stay in their houses as they age or experience disabilities. So they provide ramps, they take out carpet from linoleum for people who have wheelchairs, they replace tubs with this handicap accessible showers. So it's a lovely program. And then this one is going to take a little explanation. The direct financial assistance to home buyers, that's the down payment assistance program. HomeWise got $300,000 this year, and the balance on that is $300,000. And the reason is both HomeWise and the Housing Trust generated a lot of program income and just made loans through that. And HomeWise had so much program income that we ultimately had to recapture that. They were never able to tap into their entitlement award. Our plan is to amend that contract and allow them to spend that $300,000 over the next program year. But so they propose to serve 10 households with that 300 grand. Between the 367 generated program income for the Housing Trust and HomeWise, they actually serve 17 people. So the program income is a great thing because it allows them to reach more people, but it does make it kind of tricky to tap into the entitlement. And then finally, program administration, that's us. We allocate 20% of our annual award, which this last year was $122,809. There's quite a hefty balance, and I think a big explanation for that is I came on halfway through the program year, and I get that pays for my salary.
Let's cut it. Can we ask questions on this slide?
Yeah, please.
As we move along? Well, first, I don't see anybody on the screen if there was any specific questions. The one thing I didn't catch was the program income part.
Yeah.
That's a separate. I don't know, I understood the first part, the direct financial assistance, but then why do we have a separate line item for program income for the direct financial assistance?
Originally I had them combined, but that made it confusing. I wanted to break it out so you know that they spent down all that program income and didn't tap into the entitlement. And as a CDBG rule, if you generate program income, you have to spend that before you can tap into the entitlement.
And that's their program income, but
It's also the housing. I think that the breakdown is like not 275,000 generated from HomeWise and the other remaining 92,000 was from Housing Trust. And between the two of them, they made loans to 17 households.
are there any questions? I can't see anybody though. Can you reduce that just to see if
Yeah.
there's anyone that has their hand up?
I have my hand up.
Oh,
Go ahead, Commissioner Torres.
I was just gonna make the comment that Senior Services does publish a monthly newsletter that is distributed to seniors at the senior centers that are open, but also they are placed in strategic places at the different senior housing projects, and it's distributed throughout. Some get them mailed. So Habitat could put a small gift to the senior center person that writes the newsletter, you know, a paragraph or whatever they want about their services. And that goes directly to seniors.
that's a great idea. I'll try to connect them.
Good idea. Yeah, I think just relying on senior services in general and also our senior centers and promoting that, I think would be good. And I'm not sure why the city wouldn't promote it. We promoted other nonprofit partners that are in partnership with us. So if you need assistance with that. please let me know.
Sounds good, thanks.
The other one that puts things on Facebook and, you know, use different medias is Earth Care. And they target the South Side residents. So that's their Miguel Acosta through Earth Care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Torres. Any other questions on this slide?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Padilla?
thank you. Hey, Cody, got a question for you and just remind me again, under direct financial assistance to home buyers, the 300,000 that was funded, balance still 300,000. I think every year we talk through this, and it seems to always fall that HomeWise does such a good job and that they really aren't able to spend that money that we allocate them. Is that again the situation this year?
Yeah, it seems to be. But this time now, we made a decision because they had an outstanding balance of program income. We recaptured that and had them write checks. So currently they don't have any program income. So they should be able to tap into this entitlement right away.
And the other thing we did, Commissioner Padilla, I don't know if you remember this, but we increased the cap for the CDBG loans because with the 80% AMI buyer, this market is just impossible. And the previous cap was 30,000, which just wasn't enough to fill that gap. So we expect this year that these funds will go out the door pretty quickly.
Okay,
And I know that HomeWise had a few buyers in their pipeline. So I expect that we can expend some of this right away.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on this slide for staff? Okay, we're good. All right, thanks, Cody. I'm gonna go to the next slide. Is there a next slide?
Yeah, so I just want to explain the public comment period. We are going to run notices in the New Mexican in Spanish and English on the 1st to notify the public of a 15-day comment period between September 5th and the 20th, we'll have the caper available on our website. And it's also in the notice, we say that the paper copies are available upon request. And they're welcome to email comments or questions to me or call me. My phone number and email are gonna be in the notice. And we will also bring this for approval to the Finance Committee, Quality of Life, and then we will hold a public hearing at City Council on the 14th. That's
Thanks, Cody.
Yeah.
Did anyone have questions about what was in the packet material, which is the entire document? The actual CAPER, the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. I'm just waiting to see if there's any hands up as you look at your notes. I can start if you want. Just curious about let's see, the matrices that you have to populate. And it goes to the various goals, the affordable housing goals, which are they're very similar. And then the actual categories are the same for each goal. And then you have to like plug in these numbers. So I'm just curious if you could tell us more or say more about how you make these calculations. I know we have numbers based on our partners. But then just curious if those numbers overlap in each of the categories, and I'm assuming they duplicate as well, from one category to the next. So it just seems like a lot of bureaucratic number crunching, but maybe you could say more. I know the numbers are actual factual numbers because they come from our partners, but if you could say more about how you decide how to plug them in and doing these percentages and yeah.
So a lot of those numbers supposedly are supposed to populate on their own, and how it's set up is there's a strategic plan, then the annual action plan, and then the activity setup, and this is all in the HUD database. And it's very technical, and I guess the strategic plan, it covers 5 years, so a lot of those things where it might seem a little empty or doesn't seem like they're reaching that goal, it's because the plans change and goals change. But when you set up the activities as well, there's these matrix codes, and you also click on every goal that you think that it's relative to. And sometimes it doesn't line up. So if you set it up in the strategic plan, like saying, oh, it's gonna achieve this many rental units or something like that, but then the activity clicks on that goal and doesn't have the matching matrix code, then it's just gonna populate 0 and seem like you're not really achieving much. It's kind of a mess.
Yeah, I think we've learned a lot, and as we go into the next 5-year planning cycle, we are going to set those goals up a lot more. We're gonna set them up to actually work with the HUD system. I set them up as a planner would, which is that you can achieve more than one goal with the same program. You can also achieve one goal can have multiple programs also serving it, right? So that's the way a planner thinks. That is not the way HUD thinks. And so poor Cody, I completely set him up for utter confusion when he got to that table, because it is representing real data, but it's also not necessarily aligned through the HUD system. So the numbers are real, the dollar amounts you'll see duplicated, because if the same program is serving 2 different goals, then it's going to show up twice with that dollar amount with the accomplishment number. So if you were writing this plan yourself, you would never, ever design the table that way, ever in a million years. But the point is just to kind of relate the goal to the funding expenditure to the accomplishment, and then be able to look back and say how much progress you've made over for the 1 year and the 5 years. And we'll do it better next time.
Well, it's interesting because I don't remember it being set up exactly this way in the past, that there's been some different formatting that am I wrong?
Because we download it into a Word document, I usually edit the table so that it's easier to read. So I'm taking out some of the rows that just showed up with all zeros, because that felt like, well, it doesn't even, or repeated exactly the row above it. It's like, well, we don't really need to look at that again. So it'll, on HUD's side, it looks really different. So they're, they're having a different experience when they review it.
Did they change that format for you?
There is, I'm trying to think of what
They changed
there's,
it.
yeah, there's a table at the very end of the report that changed, it's brand new. But yeah, it always surprises me every time that table comes out exactly what it ends up looking like.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I guess for me, I look at it and it doesn't really give me the full picture of like what's happening. Your narrative does, but then when I look at their template, which I could understand why you take out rows, because it probably make it even more confusing, but it's like, wow,
Yeah.
does this even help them try to figure out if we're meeting our goals? So I feel for you. I just look at it going, there's a way
Yeah.
to I mean, is there a way to describe it? And I guess it's really in the narrative.
that's why we try to be really detailed in the narrative. And that's what my coaching for Cody was like, yeah, we have to live with the table, but talk about it for real in the narrative.
And then there was one goal that I didn't recognize, but it was improve access to high quality schools.
Yeah, that came out in the fair housing planning work that we did after the consolidated plan. So it came up as a priority and it came up as an access to opportunity issue, which it certainly is. I think we're certainly helping that goal through that Alante program. It's not necessarily access to a specific school, but it's access to education and to other, the support services that are there too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions about sections of the caper? Or just clarification you need? Scrolling through mine, because I think there was one other question I had. Let's see if anyone has hands. Let's see. There's.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
If this is the plan for 5 years, what year of the application of the plan is this one? Is the first year, the second year?
Oh, that's a great question. This is the 5th year. So we'll be redoing this plan in the upcoming year. So in the spring, you all will be reviewing the entire consolidated plan, which is huge, and we'll have a lot more public outreach than we normally do. And we'll hire somebody, a consultant, to help us as well.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Just one clarification, there's a section called homeless and other special needs, and page 15 of the document, the keeper document. It talks about the global pandemic, and essentially they're asking us to evaluate the jurisdiction's progress in meeting its specific objectives for reducing and ending homelessness through reaching out to homeless persons, especially unsheltered persons, and assessing their individual needs. So we start off the section, the paragraph, it says the global pandemic has greatly amplified the city of Santa Fe's desire to end homelessness. That sentence, I was like, we plan to end homelessness, or should we be saying that this is a need and desire to reduce homelessness? Because I don't know if, as much as all of us would like to reach to end homelessness, is it realistic to say that in the
So the language in that world is ending functional homelessness, which means that anyone who wants housing can be housed within 30 days of entering into the system. So yes, we will always have people who are on the streets and unsheltered in a snapshot moment in time. But the idea is that the system would serve everyone well enough that if you wanted shelter or you wanted housing, you could get it within 30 days.
Okay, that's how they define it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how, I don't know how HUD defines it actually. That's how the provider community, and that's the policies that were set in place with the plan, the plan to end homelessness from a few years ago. And the Build for Zero model also uses that idea of functional homelessness, which is more attainable. It feels a little bit more doable than just.
Okay, thank you. And then the other last question, I think it's the last question, was public housing. I think that paragraph that on page 20 or 19 in the document, it's for public housing and it talks about Santa Fe Civic Housing Authority. And just in general, like what they're overseeing. I think the like poignant part or section for me was that over 400 people are on the wait list for these 13 different sites and close to 200 people on the Section 8 voucher waiting list for, or 200 people are on the Section 8 waiting list.
Mhm.
That part, I mean, I knew this is the case, but I guess it's just like, this is such a big deal. It's like, I can't even fathom, I don't even think people know how many people are waiting. You know, we have our own different housing issues and different income brackets, but then we have this issue that's just like glaring
Yes.
issue and, I don't know, I guess I just wanted to comment on it where there wasn't really a question. And I'm wondering if like one of our goals is trying to reach this issue and like tackling it. Cause I feel like we'd never tackle it and it's not for not lack of
Yeah.
trying.
So the statistic that I saw in a recent planning effort was that those resources, the public housing resources, which are by far the biggest, most concentrated set of housing, affordable housing resources in any community, are estimated to only reach 20% of the need. So that local governments, philanthropic organizations, you know, you name it, other subsidy sources need to reach the rest of the 80%, which is why we feel like we're pushing a boulder up a hill, because we're doing $3 million a year in the trust fund. That's that's probably less than 1% of what the housing authority is doing, so.
So there's people on the waiting list for the vouchers, but there's also people just waiting to get into sites. And so I guess that's the
Yeah.
piece that I just struggle with because if 20% is, if only 20% are reaching us or reaching folks, then what does the city need to do to actually help with the rest, like the 80% you talked about? And it is partially the, rental assistance and the other service providers through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but then I'm like, what about the actual units? The units that are not there for people to get in. So I just want to flag that. I think we all know that this is an issue. It seems like we're not getting there yet. We do in some regard with the hotels, buying hotels and converting them, but it doesn't reach another kind of section of our community, so. And then the other question in the next paragraph, can you tell me what it means when the Civic Housing Authority utilizes site-based or site-driven wait lists? Do you know what that means? It says the SFDHA utilizes site-based or site-driven wait lists, which better supports applicants so that the authority doesn't have to turn an individual family down because of location, school district, or.
Yeah, I think what that means is that rather than the old school way of doing it was they would manage one master list. So you're next on the list, here's the unit, you have to live in that unit even if you don't want to live there. So the idea was if each site manages its own waiting list, then people have more choices. They can choose which waiting list they want to be on.
And
I
they
think
could
that's
be
the
on
idea.
multiple lists, right? They could
I-
have to-
Yeah, I would imagine they could. I don't know that for sure, but it would only make sense.
Yeah.
And then it would.
Yeah, because there'd probably be some people would be specific to like where their children's school is at. But then I'm thinking there's some people would be like, I don't, I would rather just have any option or have an option regardless of the site, but I'm just curious if they can be on multiple lists.
I think the way it works, if I may, I think the way it works is that you get on your primary list, but then you don't get on another list. You put what other sites you're willing to consider. So for instance, I could say I want to live at Villa Consuelo, but if something opens up at La Cieneguita, I might like that too. So you're only on one wait list, but with options as to what you might consider.
That's helpful. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. That's really helpful. And I think that's all. Those are all the questions I had. Is there anything else that folks wanted to ask? before we take a vote?
Madam Chair, I think we have a member of the public here, Bob Krieger. I don't know if he wants to make any public comments on the plan or if he has any
Is this
questions
the
about.
public comment option?
It's
Thank you.
not.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Um,
well, thanks for joining us, Bob. There will be other chances for public comment and also to weigh in. Where is that found? If people want to actually make comments, where does it explain how they do that? Just a-
So the public notice that will go out has the link where to find it, also all of Cody's info, so somebody can reach out directly to him. And then there's a public hearing on September 14th.
Got it, at the governing body.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Todes, you have your hand up.
Is it possible, I couldn't find it readily, but is it possible somewhere in the document to explain the direct financial assistance to home buyers program income so that there's less confusion, or if there's a way to kind of note some of these? So they don't have to get deep into the document to find the answers to where we have the summary of the programs and the amounts. Is that possible, or?
Yeah, I believe so. I think we could probably flesh that out in that affordable housing section
Okay,
or housing section.
I think it might be helpful for the public during the public comment portion.
We might be able to put it in the beginning to that paragraph where we talk about the accomplishments. We could probably have more information about the financial, because I think it's aggregated in one of the early tables, but that doesn't really tell you anything.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Thanks for that
Thank you.
suggestion.
Thanks, Commissioner Todes. Any other comments before we?
Nope.
Someone makes a motion?
Nope, none here.
What we're looking for is a motion to adopt this, approve this.
Approve the 2021-2022 consolidated annual performance evaluation report for submittal to HUD.
You're recommending
For
approval,
making,
because the governing body has to ultimately approve it, so you're recommending approval of the governing body.
Okay, I recommend what she said. But my question was, do we need to say with the addition that Cody is gonna do and
Sure.
anything like
Yeah,
that?
you can put that
sure,
with the recommended edits.
With the recommended edits, which Cody was gonna stick in there before it goes any further.
sounds good. So that we have a motion with the caveat in there. For recommending approval. Do we have a second?
Second,
From Commissioner Todes. Any other discussion?
No.
Seeing none, can I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Counselor Vidal.
Yes.
Yeah. Counselor Villegas. I'm sorry, Commissioner Villegas, Marcus Villegas.
Oh.
Yes,
Thank you.
Commissioner Padilla,
Yes,
Commissioner Watkins,
Yes,
and Commissioner Torres.
yes.
Great. So motion's approved and we'll be moving on to presentation. We have a midtown presentation. Daniel Hernandez was gonna be here, but staff is gonna take his place. There wasn't any presentation in the packet, but I'm assuming you'll have a
Yes.
presentation for
And
us.
we can provide it if anybody would like to just have their own copy of it, but it will be in the packet on, I think, September 14th for the governing body. Or actually, we'll get there, because there's actually a all right, such a pretty picture. So I think many of you have been following, of course, the Midtown redevelopment process, and we are now getting to the point where we are about to start approving some of the culmination of some of the public outreach and the public engagement and all of the research that has gone into this project to date. This slide, I'm not even gonna read through it. This has been this is from March of 2021. This is outlining all of the actions that we have had in front of us in order to make the redevelopment of Midtown an actual reality. We can talk more in detail later if you're interested, just to sort of give you a sense of where we are in the process. We have, there are two plans. We're looking at the land development plan and the community development plan. We'll talk a little bit about their relationship in a moment. We've been in the planning phase for these two plans all spring, winter, summer, and now we're starting to talk about these plans in the context of public hearings and getting approvals, which will be done before the end of the year. And by next year, we should be starting some of the RFPs to find some development partners in this process. And we just want to make the point that we didn't just start this yesterday. We've been talking about redeveloping Midtown for a long time. We've had several rounds of public engagement and public outreach, and this doesn't even include the Remike project that happened. When was that? Like 2011, probably. So people really care about this property. People really care about this part of town, and it's important, I think, that we honor all of the community's sentiment about this area, but also its ownership, because it really is a public place. So we have these two plans. We have a land development plan, a community development plan. We'll talk specifically about them, the two of them, to understand how they interact with each other. But I think one way that I like to think about it that makes it a little bit easier to understand, or just sort of see how they're connected, is if you were building a house, and John, forgive me if I use some construction analogy here that doesn't quite work, but when you're building a house, you're making some major decisions about where things will go before you're putting in some of the details that really create the house and the home. So in other words, you need to know generally where your plumbing and your electricity goes, and where the outside walls go. And so that's sort of the land development plan, like, where can we lay out that infrastructure, all of the horizontal development? Where does that go, so that we open up as many opportunities as possible? We can be as flexible as we need to be for any future emerging needs. We can be nimble and change things as things need to be changed. And then the community development plan is more like the interior rooms, like, how big do you want your bedroom, and what color do you want the tile, and where do you want your window to look out at? What do you want that view to be? Because those are the things that make home feel like home, right? And make you comfortable, and make you happy, and make it feel yours. But they're also the things that can change over time. So you might get to the point where, I think if we've done any home improvement projects, you get to the point where you think, why did I like that colored yellow? I'm actually currently thinking that in my own house. Like, what was I thinking when I picked that up? Well, that's something you can change. So the community development plan is the part that really represents the here and now and what's happening in the community. Here's the land development plan update. So this is the schedule of approvals. The ENN, the early notification, neighborhood notification meeting, was on July 14th. We've got several, and I meant to put the website on this page, it's later, but all of this information is on the Midtown website. But we posted all of the public questions that were asked. We answered them and posted them. The land development plan is now on the website. And we will be submitting an application for approval, for land use approval. Here's where things get a little weird. City staff is working on this. So city staff is applying to the city for approval. So we have had to create this distance between the staff that are the application staff and the staff that are the regulatory staff. And so that's where some of the information at this stage is a little bit limited, because we have to wait until it's actually a public record, because we don't want to influence the regulatory staff that's looking at the application. So it's very strange, but we're plugging away through it and hoping to make sense of it, but October 6th, it will go to planning commission. November 9th, along with the community development plan, it will be approved at governing body in a public hearing. So here's just sort of a preliminary look at how the site is being considered. This is by no means final. This has not very much detail at all, but you can kind of see the existing buildings that were considered high value, important, either representing architecture that people care about or a process or uses that people care about, and are in decent shape. A lot of those buildings aren't, so they were identified as more appropriately demolished, but these are the sort of core buildings that exist. You can see them. The light gray would then be the future development areas, but the thing I want to point out is just this site, one of the major challenges has been how isolated it is and how it doesn't really relate to the surrounding community at all. So which is fine for a campus to some extent, but it's a little bit more difficult when you're creating a public space where you want to invite the public in, where you want the public to feel like they can go there easily, and that you're going to be offering everything from educational opportunities to jobs to recreational opportunities to affordable housing. So that's a big part of this. You can kind of see how the framework of the campus has changed to really create many ways to get to the campus and to get through the campus. And the big green blob on the sort of lower left part, that's Franklin Miles Park. So this is another kind of exciting connection to make, because right now there's no way to get to that park from St. Michael's really. And now we're going to create a way from all of those, for all those neighborhoods around the existing neighborhoods to actually be able to get to the parks and get to some of the other amenities that will be on the site. So why do we need a land development plan? Because we have to regulate land uses. The master plan is really the physical, the horizontal, the framework. So we're looking at where the streets go, where development is allowed, where the open space is. It's looking at a lot of different sustainability issues, drainage issues, where we don't want high intensity uses on a road that can't handle more traffic. So it's kind of coordinating this idea that you're creating the bones in the master plan here. It's not prescriptive and it does allow flexibility within kind of an incremental time frame, so that as development markets change or public policy shifts, we're still able to make changes to the master plan. And that brings us to the community development plan. The community development plan, importantly, is based on these 4 pillars of sustainable development, equity, environment, economic, and culture. What the community development plan does in a nutshell is to establish the policy for the physical development. So what is the community benefit? What will serve the community's needs? And as we've talked and engaged and done many things across the community, we know that everyone, again, cares deeply about this space, wants to be able to go there. We heard lots of people talk about, we just want a place where we can gather, where we feel welcome, where we can afford to live, where we can have job opportunities, where we can have educational opportunities. So that's kind of the core of the community development plan. And the first pillar, the equity pillar, really looks at housing affordability and housing choices, because there are lots of different needs. Just because you need affordable housing or you can't afford your current housing doesn't mean that the same solution is going to work for you as it might work for someone else. So we just really want to focus on making sure there are as many different choices as possible, size choices, tenure choices. Will it be a land trust? Will it be rental, home ownership opportunities? But also because we want it to be on a community scale. So this isn't going to be 500 units built by a production builder. This is gonna be lots of little different stuff that reflects local capacity and local character as well. But then there's this very important element, this last one. This is such a big thing, it's kind of hard that it's just on the bottom of this slide in 3 bullets, but the idea that there's going to be an impact on surrounding neighborhoods, that folks who lived in these neighborhoods for a long time are worried that they, rightfully so, that if this happens the way it's happened in other communities, they may face the risk of displacement. So how do we also look at stabilizing surrounding neighborhoods, improving surrounding neighborhoods, creating access to opportunity for surrounding neighborhoods? They're both physically, like I talked about, with all the ways to get in and out of the campus, but also economically, environmentally, recreationally, educationally, just looking at sort of the whole community need for the site. And then we're looking at the displacement overlay, development without displacement overlay district that Chainbreaker has been working on. And so we're proposing that become a key core piece of this equity pillar. Environment, and I think everyone on this call is pretty tuned in to the idea of connectivity and mobility and environmental design and what it means to be able to walk and feel safe walking or riding a bike, managing water through retention and detention instead of just funneling it off site, also capturing water from rooftops, and creating pollinator gardens and using local plants for landscape, and using, and this is the technical piece, and to be honest, I don't know a whole lot about this, but the lead, so this is the Green Building Council's rating system for sustainability. There's a whole system, and normally or traditionally it's been focused on a single building, but there's a whole way also to rate a whole neighborhood. And so we're gonna go for the gold on that one. Environment, again, we're looking at a set of mixed uses, where you can live and work and get your coffee and walk your kids to school safely, and there's lots of opportunities, but also just kind of returning to that more interesting streetscape. So if you think about St. Mike's with the big, huge parking lots and the big wide lanes and the cars driving fast, and you take your life in your hands if you try to cross the street, this is going to be the antithesis to that. This is going to be a place where cars share the road, but you can comfortably get around without having to drive a car. And as you walk along the streetscape, it'll feel interesting and welcoming, and not just a big sterile wall staring at you, or a parking lot. And I think, there's a lot of interest in, as I said, reusing a lot of the buildings. And so that will also happen, which is kind of cool to see some of the concept drawings of like the building you recognize with like this cool new building right next to it. And it's sort of, oh, wow, that does feel like something, because you recognize the old building and then it sort of feels like so many possibilities. That's exciting. And then the economy pillar. So some of the first RFPs to go out will be promoting jobs for local residents in the film and multimedia, arts and entertainment technology, because we know we have momentum in those areas. So we're really going to see if we can start building a little microeconomic climate there that builds on those strengths. We've also got the site is surrounded by schools. It also has a higher education center right there. So there's a lot of educational opportunities too that we want to really be able to amplify and leverage. And I don't know what that last one means. I'm not going to talk about it. The other thing I think has always been a big priority for economic development here at the city is supporting all of the local talent and people who are pretty amazing at starting businesses that meet local needs, that build on their own skills and talents. We have an amazing small business climate here. There's so many so many small businesses run by just super smart, great people. So focusing on that, I think also the idea of live work, like how nice if you're able to run your business. I mean, we've all been doing this a little bit over the pandemic, but if you actually have a space that works so you can run a business and also live there, then you're only paying one rent instead of two. And then the community resources piece is a big one. And I think it's important that it's been included in the economy section, but it's this idea that all of these social supports are necessary to help people succeed economically as well. So they need a place. If you know, the story that Cody just told about these kids who had to skip school because they have this baby, well, they're, you know, that means the childcare is such an important piece of someone's individual success as well. But also I think, you know, there's a lack of services in the surrounding neighborhoods. So really creating a center at the campus that can meet all sorts of needs for people living all around the campus as well. And then this idea of culture and the memory of place, we heard a lot about how important, and I like this, using this term placekeeping instead of placemaking. Like there already is a place and people already care about it, and it means a lot to many generations and centuries of people who've lived here. So let's focus on that. And again, this whole idea of a sense of welcome and a public space that feels like that people can go and gather and be there. And there's a lot of, you know, I think we will have this very last bullet. This is more technical. This is kind of beyond my pay range right now. But this idea of what are the different tools that we could have to support the redevelopment. And one of them is establishing a redevelopment area, a metropolitan redevelopment area. We had a presentation a couple months ago from our legal staff. And this is another topic that will start getting further fleshed out as we go into the next few months and weeks. So here's the schedule for the community development plan. Updates, these are all the updates, and then at the governing body hearing alongside of the land development plan, it will be discussed and approved. And then here are all of the public engagement reports that have been supported, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly by the city. And here's the website, the Midtown District SantaFe.org, and everything's on there. So please check it out. And I believe the last slide with the website is right here. And I think we've made some changes, improvements, because I think you made a really good point the other night that some of that information was, yeah, it's there, but you kind of have to dig for it, which is not a good thing on a website. You don't want to dig for anything. So I'll stop sharing and see if there are any comments or questions that I may or may not be able to answer.
Great.
But if not, I'll get back to you.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for the presentation. We can make sure that staff sends it to all of you. So you can maybe read it in depth. I don't know if I can see anybody, if there's a way to show the commissioners to see if we can start with any questions or comments.
Why did it?
Madam Chair, question?
Okay, we don't see you yet, but I hear you. So Commissioner Padilla.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Alex, and good fill in for Daniel. So good job. But got a question. In your schedule was uninterrupted schedule. Do you foresee any issues at Planning Commission with trying to get it reviewed and approved, because you had it marching directly to the next city governing body meeting for final review and approval? Are you anticipating any resistance, any input for changes from the community?
That's a great question, Commissioner Padilla, and it sounds like you've been down that road before, maybe where it hasn't been quite such a direct stepping stone from meeting. I think we're being optimistic, probably, but I also think that the public hearing is really, it's not at that point in time, it wouldn't be set in stone anyway, so if it's approved with changes, you know, that's always part of that approval process as well, so I don't, and it will never be a static, just snapshot in time, you know, done, move on, it's gonna have to be a live document. For you're on mute, Commissioner.
Sorry, follow-up question. You have it going to the governing body. What is the temperature of the governing body for review, for approval of this plan? I mean, I don't know if that's for you to answer or maybe for the counselor to step in.
Do you feel like answering?
I think, you know, generally, especially with the additional community input, I think we have a good sense of like things that people want to see in the community, and in the site, and things they don't want to see as well. And I think that coverage has been great, you know, different ways of governance, looking at community, land trusts. I think that conversation is finally coming to, like, it's actually being talked about now, which has been nice, because those of us that keep talking about it, I feel like it didn't like gain traction, and I think it's a viable option, at least for part of the campus or part of the area. I think there's still a lot of unknowns. I think the one thing that I don't think the community, at least in the public outreach, have really brought this up, but I think it comes up for us as like a governance, the governance of this structure, and like how the campus, what it will look like as things start to be developed on it or redeveloped. And I guess my question is kind of like, I don't think the public has brought this up, but I know counselors have, about how it will be managed. And the reason why I say managed is part of it, the way this is being approached, at least in the last iteration, has been about selling off parcels. And if the city wouldn't have control over most of the campus after they're sold, versus looking at other structures that we've had, other models like Tierra Contenta and the rail yard, and why we didn't look at those models in terms of like long-term benefits. You know, and I think we should probably maybe talk about this. I don't want to like supersede any of these questions of the commissioners, but I do want to ask about that, because I think it hasn't come up, and I'm somewhat concerned, like, well, how do we then have some control over aspects of the property versus the way we've done it in other models where we haven't just sold, or we have sold off parcels, and then there's a benefit that comes back to the city, like Tierra Contenta.
Right.
Like, we get a benefit from that. Every single time there's a parcel or phase that gets sold or developed, the city benefits from it. So I don't see the benefit of this one yet, and maybe that's what we haven't figured out. That's a long-winded question. I don't know if that helps to answer, Commissioner Padilla, but that's been the one thing that glaringly has been like, unsure, at least I feel unsure about it, maybe some other colleagues. And just like the governance and the financial possibilities, like the metropolitan redevelopment area. Like, how does that get actualized and operationalized? We don't know yet. So stuff there.
Yeah, I think, Madam Chair, that's a great question, and I think the MRA, that's actually an advantage to that, because it has a baked-in governance system that it has to, by state law, there's a whole process that has to happen, and the governance is an external governance, which is a benefit when you're trying to do development. So it's taken out of the political conversation to some extent, which is, I think, helpful. And the rail yard did that, Tierra Contenta did that, you know, it's a possibly a more streamlined or a more, well, it gives the public to control and the ability to have input as those decisions are made, because it's out of that, the political context to some extent. I mean, it's of course still going to have the influence, but I think to the other point, the way that the community objectives are met is that the land's not just sold, it's RFP'd. So the developer has to be able to perform according to the city's desires for that tract of land. So if the city says, we want an affordable housing, we want a mixed income, I'm making this up. So don't quote me on this, but if the city said this tract of land is perfect for a mixed income housing apartment building. Okay, developer, we want 40% affordable in this building. And so the developer that can do that is the one that will be chosen as the city's, it's almost like choosing a development partner, because the city has the land, the city can leverage the value of that land to meet the public benefit. So that's kind of the lens through which those dispositions will be made under that umbrella of the MRA kind of governing the process.
And I think that's where we need to be clear about, like, city has the land, are we selling the land, do we keep control of the land? Are only parts of the campus controlled by the city?
Yeah.
I think that's the part that's the unknown, and then we've never done an MRA in Santa Fe, although they've done it in Albuquerque, so to see how it's operation, how it's,
This is an MRA,
Function, yeah.
the rail yard is
Right.
an MRA, but we'll be doing
but
it
it's a different
differently.
structure.
It's a
Yeah.
different structure.
Yeah, so I think that those are the kind of like questions that still maybe remain, at least from the last public or last meeting we had, as when this presentation was given.
And I should also clarify what the governing body is doing on November 9th is approving the rezoning application. So this is nothing about, like, every single development decision that's made will
Right.
also have to go through. a
Correct.
whole
That's
string of
correct. And
approvals.
that was, Madam Chair, that was my question. The rezoning application is a significant move to be able to move this project forward. So my question was, just what do you feel, or what did you think, how do you feel the governing body is positioned at this time to approve a rezoning? That was, I mean, is it 60-40, 70-30, or it's, you know, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want.
Well, I actually don't, I don't think that's come up really in detail. I
Okay.
think most of us realize that you have to rezone in order to have other options, because right now, the way it's zoned, it's very limiting.
Correct.
Because it was zoned for institutional.
Correct.
primarily, and so that in itself doesn't even lend to like flexibility for housing options. So I think most of us would realize that that's something, a step that needs to happen. I think there's just all these other unknowns that kind of follow in line with like what's next, but thank you for clarifying, like the actual vote for this next phase, if you will, is
Correct.
really just the rezoning application.
Correct. Okay. So that's you're not going to answer that one then.
I don't really know because.
Okay,
it hasn't come
perfect.
up. Other than what I just told you that.
Okay, great.
On it, yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it comes out of the planning commission. I mean, I'm sure public input will be significant. I mean, public has been very vocal on both in support and against the projects, the ideas, the concepts, and you know, I'm sure there'll be some very spirited conversation and discussion about the rezoning. But thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Padilla. I see Commissioner Torres' hand up.
I was at the last community engagement meeting held by Chainbreaker last week, I believe it was. And Daniel and some other city staff were there. Aurora, I think it's the name of the city attorney that made a presentation to us, I believe. Or it might not be Aurora, but there's a city attorney that was there and someone else.
Is it
Who?
Andrea?
Oh, Andrea, yeah, Andrea. So then there was maybe between, I would say 25 and 35 people present from the community, different ages and a mixed income group of people. The majority of them living in the Hopewell Man area or across behind the school on the other side of the park. And the questions that were most, people wanted to know, how will it affect neighboring families? What can they expect regarding gentrification? How is that going to be mitigated so that more people don't get displaced? Value of properties going way high with the development on the campus. You know, those were most of the concerns. But also Daniel talked about, the way I heard him say it, it's like there's already been like 4 parcels that will be set aside for affordable housing. But he didn't say where on the property those parcels would be or what size those parcels would be. But he did talk about 4 parcels. And people wanted to know that. The other thing was that he said there would probably be a requirement of a 30% commitment to affordable housing, but there wasn't a full definition of affordable for whom. What exactly does affordable mean? And then let me see, the other important thing was that he talked about the mayor appointing a commission. And I believe that commission would be in relation to the MRI. And of course, the question is, what types of experiences or persons might be considered for that commission? But the way he talked about it wasn't like it's open to people to say they wanted to be on the commission, but rather he didn't explain that part. So there were questions around that too. And what else? I think those were the most salient of questions and concerns presented by the people there.
Thank you, Commissioner Torres.
Mhm.
Did you want to respond? I wasn't at that meeting, so.
Yeah, I wasn't there either. I had to go to planning commission that night, but I think I'm so glad. Thank you so much for summarizing that, because I think that none of that surprises me, because I feel like those are really the core questions that people have. And from the affordable housing perspective, you know, we have our inclusionary zoning program will apply no matter what. So that's one level of affordability. But what we've managed to do when the city actively supports either tax credit projects or other subsidized projects, is we're able to really deepen that affordability so that all of our newer projects have set asides for people at 30% of area median income and below. And that's really, I think that's a really important piece, because we know there isn't just one size fits all, that there's affordability need it's a huge range of needs. And a land trust model gets to a different level of affordability. So there's lots of possibilities out there.
And Commissioner Michael Garcia was there at that meeting.
Question though, on something that Commissioner Torres brought up was the parcels. I didn't think there was designated parcels
Right.
for affordable housing at this time.
Well, there's a dedicated amount of acreage,
Acreage.
but we don't know, because we haven't finished the planning work and the analysis to know where, based on where the infrastructure can support it or needs improvement. We don't know where the parcels and the different densities will go yet. So that will also be part of that land development plan. Will be looking at where the housing can go, where the commercial can go, making those choices at that time.
And Alex, do you know anything about how the MRA would be structured?
So there are certain rules that apply, but I don't know if they dictate the process for choosing. So I think it would be, that's a really good question though. And I think we should probably talk about that and what, I know that we've said very strongly, staff that we want somebody from the surrounding neighborhoods to be on that board, because that's really important to have that interest very well represented and very clearly represented in that decision-making process. So, but that's good. I'm glad you brought that up, because I'll mention that, and we probably need to come up with it's not me. But certainly as we consider the MRA, we should come up with some ideas for how that would work.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be important and people will wanna know, because appointments, I don't think that's really. I don't know, I think there's maybe other ways to do it versus just appointment.
Yeah.
And maybe we could look into the Albuquerque model to see what they do.
Yeah.
Let's see, Commissioner Marquez. Do you have a question? Comments?
More than a question, is a comment. When a project like this start, we all start evaluating the place where we live and the things that are around here. And for example, we have had a super hard week with the beginning of the school year in this area of El Camino Real. And the people is asking of kind of questions about the apartment complex that is on the side of the school, and how they can look to the students when they are in the playground, and how hard it is to get emergency help if there's the case that is needed, and how long it takes to cross 4 minutes driving and it becomes 25 minutes. So people with this project start evaluating the conditions of other neighborhoods that are here in the city. And it's really hard when they ask you, and I ask these questions to the air too, because we need to think on this, but also how this is going to impact if those families move that are living in that area and they move to this area, and how that is going to increase the traffic and the complications that we already have, and the homes that are around, like the complex that I just mentioned, that is not even affordable, and we don't have any student from that complex in the school because they say that they are very expensive, and all kinds of questions that the people that is not part of the project of Midtown, but when they hear about Midtown, they start asking questions and wondering about the problems that we live in other neighborhoods. So it's just a comment that I want to make extensive to you, because we hear this every day.
That's a good point. Those are good points, Commissioner Marquez. For once, like making sure that Midtown actually serves the actual school districts and the services that are there, and not contributing to more displacement, and then actually just accessibility too, about how you actually get from point A to point B and being able to get to schools if people are walking. Because where you're talking about Camino Real and kids walking and trying to cross South Meadows, that's been challenging, I think, and we're thinking of other ways with that trail system. Yeah, there's a lot packaged to what you said. I think there's things that a lot to think about. So thank you. Let's see. I don't know if Commissioner Watkins had any questions. Who are we missing? Did we lose somebody? It's not, okay. Well, I guess if there aren't any more questions or comments, if anything comes up and you need clarification, you can reach out to Alex and get some clarity. We still have a lot of meetings coming up that will go through committees. What was the pathway again? For the next, we've already heard it in quality of life. So next week is the governing body presentation, which is the same presentation, right?
Yeah. But I'm gonna bring up a couple of these comments before that presentation, because I think it would be good to bring them up earlier than later, for sure.
Yes.
And then it goes to planning commission on the community development plan goes to planning commission on September 15th as a progress report on presentation, and then both go, and the land development plan goes to planning commission. Can you scroll back up to that one, Cody? I think it's October.
So when the September 15th planning commission, will they be voting? on the
No,
rezoning?
it'll be more of an informational
Okay.
report. Because they won't actually approve the community development plan. It'll get approved by resolution by the governing body.
After the rezoning, is that in parallel with the?
Right, the governing body will be approving both together. And that felt important because we wanted to make sure the rezoning approval was embedded in the policy document, so that it wasn't just a really separate decision-making, that it felt like they were aligned as the decisions were being made. So, yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Padilla.
clarification, please. Alex, are you saying that the planning commission will not make a decision or rule on the rezoning? Is that what I heard?
No,
Oh.
they will be making the recommendation, they will be making the recommendation to the governing body to approve the zoning, presumably. The community development plan is the policy plan, so they will
Right.
not be approving that, but we wanted to make sure that they're informed so that they understand where the rezoning application.
Got it.
what it
Thank
is.
you.
So there's a presentation and then they'll be voting the next month.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
Commissioner Toda, sorry, I missed your hand in the corner there.
It's okay, thank you. I believe Daniel said the questions from the Chainbreaker community engagement meeting, he was gonna have them up on the Midtown website.
Oh, good, okay.
All of that information should be up already on that website.
To know, I still have issues with the categories of how to find things, but I'll tell staff about this after. Because I think once you actually get to those Q&A, it's helpful to hear what people are asking and then the answers to them. So.
Yeah.
To show you after.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, any other questions about this or comments on the presentation? Alrighty, so we'll move on to matters from staff.
Do we have any matters?
No matters to
Just-
staff.
Okay, any matters from the commissioners?
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
Madam Chair, I know that we have a guest on the Zoom call, colleague of mine, Bob Krieger. Are there guests? I see other people in the room with you today. Are there other guests there?
there is one guest,
Lee DePietro.
Lee DePietro.
Oh,
Hi, John.
Yeah.
How are you?
well, thank you, Lee.
Been a long time.
Yes, it has.
Thank you for joining us in our meetings. We don't always get visitors, so it's nice to have that.
Yeah, that's true.
Are there any matters from the commission? Okay,
None.
and I don't have any matters other than our next meeting is. Is that right? Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's already gonna be September 20th, 2022. And I would just want to say if there's, I don't know what's on the agenda for that meeting. Is that the Caper final?
No, today's a caper approval, because, yeah, I don't think we'll have anything.
So if there's an idea, because we all kind of listed some things we'd be interested in terms of presentation, like information sessions
Right.
or learning sessions. And I think we've covered most of them that we've talked to. There's one remaining that we need to figure out what makes sense. But if there's something else that you wanted to learn more about or that we haven't touched upon that we need further like in-depth conversation or a presenter, can you let us know and email me and staff just to let us know what you're thinking so we can try to cover other areas that maybe we haven't considered yet. So that would be great. Thank you. And if that's, go ahead.
We had, I think, land trust.
Yes.
Potential for land. Is that one of the ones on your?
Community land trust was one I think that we wanted to learn more about and maybe somebody from the Sawmill Land Trust and Albert can give us some information about like what that looks like, or what that looked like for them to develop that property. And it's kind of in another phase too, so it'd be interesting to see like what it started with and what has shifted. Commissioner Marquez, did you have a?
Yeah,
suggestion?
as we spoke before about the strategic plan, if this is the 5th year of a 5-year plan, so another plan has to be created. So I want to learn about how this plan is going to be created and what are the parts or the goals of the plan. Learn more about this.
That's great.
Okay,
I love that idea.
sounds
It's
good.
I forget that not all of you have been through this 10 times.
The bureaucratic process.
I
Sounds
also
good. Thank you
mentioned-
for that. And
Yeah, that's
go ahead.
great.
I mentioned to Alex that there's been at least one article in the paper about how Santa Fe needs a housing authority. So that might be something that'd be nice to have a discussion about what's good, what's fair. I think, kind of in terms of what else what, if anything else, does Santa Fe need, or what do we need to grow locally, to improve what we can get done here? So.
Because we used to have a housing authority in the past, right?
Well, we have 2 housing authorities here.
Yeah,
Well, I'm talking about one that the city's, is, I don't know, part of, if that makes sense, that we're not a member, I don't know how to describe that, the difference of.
Well, yeah, so the Civic Housing Authority used to be a division of city government. And then it was emancipated. County Housing Authority is still a division of county government.
If there's anything else that folks think about, please email us and we can try to work it out. Obviously, we can't have all presentations in one next meeting. We've tried 2 and that's like barely getting us, like we barely make it to our next meeting that we have to go to, so. Yeah.
Well,
we'll have to figure
October
that-
might be a good time to do the presentation about the consolidated plan and what that looks like and what the process is, because it's a pretty hefty document. It has several parts to it. So
Okay.
that might be good, and then we could,
So September
yeah,
will be,
do
okay, sounds good. Well, thank you all. I hope you all have a great evening. Hopefully someday we'll all be in person. Wouldn't that be fun? But I'm glad we have this option. Makes it easier. All right, we will adjourn exactly at 5 p.m. Woo-hoo.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
Good night.
Well done,
Bye.
Madam Chair.